All right, well, welcome back to our podcast, and we're still in the series of Fix This First. It's been a little bit slow going here, Anthony, but here we are, and we're going to do this one here. We're going to help local service businesses like tree service and landscapers build the systems that make growth possible. So the last episode, we talked about some of the digital foundations here, which are your website, your Google business profile, and just some of the trust signals that tell Google and the homeowners that you're legit. So today we're going to go one step deeper, because you can have the best looking website and the most polished profile and still not show up. So today is all about visibility and why some companies rank in local search and others don't, and what you can do to move up. And so, Anthony, I know you've experienced this. We've kind of talked about it before. So welcome my co-host and partner, Anthony Hilb. And so say hello, Anthony.
Hello, and yes, I love that topic because it can be confusing on why some people show up at the top of Google Maps or organic or at the top of Google Guarantee.
Yep.
And I've always just developed theories that I'm not sure if they're true, so I'd love to ask you about those.
Sure. So
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about why you're not showing up.
Sure.
And just to recap, maybe we talked about it before, but there's some areas on Google search results. You'll have your Google guaranteed or local service ads up at the top. You'll have some paid ads often, and then there's that map that you see on the right with three businesses there. Sometimes a paid business finds its way in there for a fourth one. And then there's the organic search results that are below it. And now we're getting more of the search generative results that are coming up there. Some of the AI pieces are getting tacked in there as well. But you need to be in all these places. And so the more places you are, the more likely somebody's going to click on you and come to you. But one thing that's really important is that if you're not coming up in the map and you're not coming up in organic search, you're essentially, and some of the other search results too, you can pay, you're invisible. And the map pack shows those local businesses based on a number of factors. One is there's a mix of location, there's reputation, and then there's also relevance to the search. So the organic results below are more heavily influenced by your website content and domain authority, but they all work together. So I would say most business owners assume that if they have a website and they have a Google listing, they'll just start showing up. But it's just really, it's not that simple. And so let's look at those things that we're talking about relevance, how well your content matches, the proximity to how close you are to the person who's searching out your information, and prominence, really, like how credible your business appears online. So I'm assuming, Anthony, that it took some time for you to work your way into that map pack. And probably still fight that as well.
We got lucky though. The first year or two. It still took a year or two, but the first year, not as many people, because we're talking back in 2016. Different era, different times. But the first time I started running paid ads on my own, nobody else was even doing it. So we would at least show up in the paid section.
Yeah.
And then I paid, I think it was only $10 a month to Vistaprint at the time, which it does the backlinks, or it lists you on the directories.
Okay.
And every month it would
citations.
refresh your listing on those directories. And then that got me to the top of, in the top 3 of maps. And that was huge at the time, because, and I always thought that's what it was, because I wanted to ask you about my theories with these things, because I don't think a lot of people were doing the directories update. I think we use something now like Bright Local, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, Bright Local is a tool, and then you can use that to help create your citations, which are your NAP, your name and your address and your phone number. And that consistency across the big directories online will let Google know that you're consistent and credible. And then there's also local directories and different industry directories that maybe are specific to what you're doing in lawn care or tree service, that you want to be in those too. So those are certainly part of how you get into that map pack. So, actually let's kind of just talk about that. It's important to make sure that you have a really optimized Google business profile. You want to make sure that, first of all, that you're in the right category. I mean, what happens if you are, a tree service company, but you're putting down that you're a gardener? There's going to be a disconnect there. If you're not talking about the different services that you have, there's going to be a disconnect. So we really want to make sure that you have first off, you have to have your name of your company very clearly stated in the information on the top of your Google business profile. So that's important. So it really, again, that optimization, making sure that everything is tied up nicely in a bow with service, category, services, name, and locations that you want to be serving. And additionally, you want to make sure that you have those good citations that you're talking about. So we can probably do a little sidebar here on the citations. Hold on a second. So when it comes to your on-site Google business profile optimization, so you want to I suggest that you have a good primary category. So you want to pick one that clearly matches your service. You don't want to pick one that's tree service and put yourself down as a gardener or a landscape designer and you're a contractor. It's really important that you are clear on that. And it's also in terms of your name, it should match your business name. Now, there are ways, I'm not suggesting that you have to do this, but some people have like Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping is really clear because it tells everybody what you do, right? But there are ways you can get a DBA for your business and change the business name accordingly so that you could be Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping, Bloomington, Indiana. That could be your business name, and you can officially put that into your Google business profile. So Google does allow for that. That's an important piece of it.
We actually did that, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
Because our official name is Anthony's Home Services, because we did a variety of home services when we first started, but we narrowed it down, at least for the time being, and realized, oh man, when people search for lawn care and then the company name says Anthony's Home Services, we just thought there was some incongruency there. So yeah, we did a DBA as Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping.
Perfect. I mean, and that you can even do it in location too if you have a specific location that you want to do.
I didn't know that.
That's cool. Anything that your DBA is, it's a little bit of a hack, but it's allowed. It's something you're allowed to do. Now, one thing that also makes it really helpful with ranking is a service area. Now, there's some challenges with being a service area business. It makes sense, right? Like you don't have people coming to your address, for example, then if they're not coming to your address, you should have your address hidden. If it's your home, for example, Google doesn't really want people to come to your home, and you don't want to be open 24/7, and that's all about getting directions. However, if you can have an office space or a location, you can't use a UPS, you can't use mailboxes, etc. If you have an address that's published and you have some kind of office presence there, you can put that, and that would help for rankings. Most of everybody who's tested it will show that it's more likely that you're going to show up in these Google Map packs if you have an actual physical location. Doesn't mean you can't rank with the service area business, but it is an advantage to have an office or an address that people can go to see you at, and Google sees that more favorably. I don't know. I think in part because people would gamify the system and be like, well, I'm here and I'm not, but let's say you're somewhere in northern Indiana, far away, and you're trying to rank in Bloomington. That's why they don't want you to do that. They want somebody who's local, and they're providing a service, Google is, and showing your Google business profile. So it's really important that for them that you are giving good information. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Everybody can choose to do how they go about this, but really everything that you do should follow Google's guidelines to the best of your ability.
I wasn't even aware that they would still allow. I was under the impression that Google was shifting away from allowing people to operate out of their home location as an address.
They have shifted out of that. So you really can't. You can't, by their guidelines, you can't do that. So if you have an office space somewhere, some people will actually rent space so they can have an office, so they can be found in that area. But really what they want is that when they show that address, people are going to be able to find them and come to you, and somebody will be there manning the office. But if you have a meeting there once in a while, I think that fits as well. But everybody needs to just follow the Google guidelines, but that is something that will show that you will rank a little bit better if you are showing an address versus not showing an address.
So can you still have a Google business profile operated out of your house? You just don't show
Sure.
the address? You still can do that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So
Okay.
there's
I wasn't.
value.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there's
thought they
definitely
were. I
value.
thought they were like just not doing that because when we updated our address, they made us do a video of our signs and everything. So I thought, oh
Yeah,
man, because we started at my old house, out of the first
sure.
house my wife and I owned, and we put the address on there. They allowed it, and then when we had this new office, we have to get videos of our signs. I thought, oh man, what are all these home based businesses that are on Google going to do?
Yeah. Well, they you can hide your address of the service area of business, but there certainly was a period of time there, and still happens sometimes, where they will go ahead and suspend a profile that has a home address that isn't following the guidelines, and then you have to change it to a service area business to get reinstated. But again, ideally, you can have an address somewhere, have an office, and Google will find that to be, they'll use that in terms of proximity because they know that your office is near where this person is searching. So that's one factor of it in terms of proximity. And let me go back here. And so I just had some notes on this because, to keep it changes quite often, but some of the things are standard here in doing this. So you want to make sure too that you have your services, list your key offerings, make sure those are being described. It just helps with that matching to the searches that people are doing. You want to upload fresh, real photos. You don't want anything that's stock photos. You don't want what you really want are the before and afters, crews at work, vehicles, your branding. That's the kind of stuff that Google wants. I think goes back to, maybe we talked about it last time, which is your money, your life, which is you're working in an industry where you're working in and around people's homes. And if you drop a tree on somebody's roof, that's a problem. And so Google wants to promote those who are going to be most trustworthy. And so if you're showing stock photos of some other guy, European guy in a green jumpsuit, cutting a branch with some weird looking tool, that's not what Google's looking for. They're looking for somebody who's doing the actual work. So drone footage is great. Those little videos or videos of people doing the work. You want to make sure that you have just photos of before and afters. Those are all things that will be helpful in order to promote that Google business profile. Another thing too is that you can do our posts, weekly posts. You can give an offer. You can talk about where you're doing your work. Hey, I'm at this house in this neighborhood. And Google can pick up on that. Their algorithm's incredible. They'll understand where you're doing work and what kind of work you're doing. And then if you get reviews, the more reviews you have, the better off you are. So the reviews are an important trust factor in terms of, if you got 10, okay, but if you have 20 or 30 or 40, the more that you have, the better. They don't have to be perfect. I think there's a misconception that if I'm only 5 stars, I think after a while people start to tune out to the 5 stars because who's perfect, right? So if you've got a 4.8 or a 4.9 or even a 4.7, that's still really good. Everybody knows that over the course of business there can be issues, but you don't want to go much lower than that. And so you want to get consistent reviews over and over, fresh reviews. So that's an important piece. And then having a good business description, making sure that you're telling what you do and where you do it. This isn't about gaming the system. It's really just being very forward and trustworthy and active here.
And we were talking about last time, when you upload photos to Google, if they're actually photos that you took at a real job site in the local area you're servicing, Google knows that.
Yeah, there's a question about the geotags on the back
Mm-hmm.
of them, but you can describe what's going up there, but they should be able to pull it together and understand what they're looking at. If it's a street, it's an address, they're pretty able to figure out precisely where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another thing I wanted to mention in terms of reviews, it is really important that you respond to reviews and quickly. It's not something like if you've got a new review and you respond 2.5 months later, Google doesn't think that you're taking care of their customers, which are also your customers. So it's really important that you take that opportunity to respond to those reviews and say thank you and let them know that you appreciated them. And when you're getting those reviews, you can always ask people to leave pictures. So if you're doing a hardscaping job, for example, what better thing to see than a picture of the finished work from an actual client? It's very, very valuable. Not only for Google, but also for anybody who's looking and says, oh, I see the review and I see these pictures. Yeah, I like what I see. So I would certainly recommend that. So I think we started talking about it a little bit before, but I wanted to come back to it, which are those citations. And so you can use a tool like Bright Local or Whitespark or Moz Local. And what they're going to do is they're going to find your name, your business name. So maybe in the beginning you were Anthony's Home Service, and then you were Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping. Well, there's a disconnect there. And so those tools can help you to find those directory listings out there that say Anthony's Home Care and correct them so that you've got across the board, you've got Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping. It tells the story that you're consistent. And so it's important to get in there and do that. And then additionally, you can get 50, 60, 70 plus to get more citations that have that name, address, and phone number that are really telling Google, hey, not only am I out there, but I'm really out there. I got my tentacles everywhere, and this is what I do, and this is where I do it, and everybody says so. So it's important to get those citations in there. Now, in the past, they were the most important thing you could possibly do. Then they disappeared as being an important factor. And now they're back as an important factor again. So long story short, just do it. There's nothing, it's not really a lot of expense to it. A couple $100 will get you all those citations and cleaned up. It's worth doing and worth keeping tabs on so that you don't have that as a problem, whether or not it's a ranking factor for Google or not. All right. So moving on, I talked about the Google Business Profile and then also about the organic profile or organic search results below. And so, a big part of visibility is having good content on your site. And it's not just for content for this sake of content, but strategic content. Too many sites have a homepage, maybe a service page or two, but it's really not enough to compete locally. So I certainly suggest, and also AI pulling those pages of content for their own information. You want to have really good service pages talking about all of your services. So if you're a tree service company, tree removal, tree trimming, stump removal, stump grinding, whatever service that you have, or why am I blanking all of a sudden? Cabling trees, if that's something you do and you want to come up for that, that's certainly something that should have its own page. Additionally, in terms of visibility, and again, this is not something where you do it once and it works for you unless you're in one of those areas where there's no content, there's no competition. You can outdo somebody really quickly just by having good service pages and having good location pages. But you definitely want to have location pages that talk to you about the services you provide in and around that location, and you can get uber specific with those locations and what you know about those locations and how you provide different services that are going to show that you're different than somebody else in that location. So services and locations, and then also blog content. You work in silos with content to talk about a topic. So you want to talk about, I get my mind on trees, but you want to talk about tree trimming. Well, you can talk about tree trimming and then do subtopics of tree trimming. You can talk about safety on a page with a blog content. You can talk about pricing. You can talk about techniques. You can talk about the benefit to the tree. There's so many different subtopics that you can talk about, which will help solidify that main page of topic that you're focused on. So it's tree trimming. And the same goes for those location pages as well. So really working in these content silos helps to really focus in on one particular area and service, and you can repeat that cycle over and over again.
Well, and our best clients have actually taken the time to read all of our blogs and all the content on the web. It really surprises me. And then it ends up being some of our top clients that are reading everything, every newsletter, because we do physical newsletters and we digitize that too. So we have the digital newsletter, blogs, and they just stay up to date on it because they, as they got older, their passion project became their yard and gardening. The more you say something, the more you talk about the techniques of tree trimming, and you can trim a certain tree this way, but not but not this species of tree. You can't do that with this. They really love that more than I anticipated.
Right, right. And also, and sometimes I'm not even thinking enough for the consumer themselves, because sometimes I think they really just do surface. But sometimes they just need to see enough that you're the authority, that you're talking about a topic that's related. But it's good to hear that your people are talking, that your customers are reading what's on there. That means you're providing something of value to them. And the more that you provide that value, the more authoritative you are, the more expertise that you show, the more trust that they're going to have for you. So I think that's great. That's really the way it's supposed to be. And sometimes people just write blogs for the sake of blogs, and there is the value in that. But I do think if it's worthwhile, it'll get shown.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a blog that people reference all the time, and it's like common weeds in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And it's a weed identification guide or a tree identification guide. Now that we have AI and apps that you can just take a picture of the tree, maybe Google searches for that aren't as strong as they once were, but when we published that in 2018 or 2019, it got a lot of visits back then.
Well, don't underestimate the power of good content, because even the AI tools want that. They want to find something that's of value to their searchers. So
yeah,
while a picture might show up, but that's one of the things that, speaking of visibility, I'm sure this question is going to come up a lot, which is, well, why don't I just use AI to build out new information? It's got value in terms of quantity, but it's not always quality, or sometimes it's quality, but it's just regurgitated. So human-produced experiential content is always going to trump AI, at least for the foreseeable future, but that could change. But as it stands right now, I think having more content that's human-written, it can be inspired by some AI prompts, is gonna be more valuable, and that's what Google wants, is that valuable, authoritative, real information.
Yeah, I think some of the marketing firms we work with use AI for some of these posts.
Mm-hmm. I think for posts you're okay.
No, I'm saying blog.
For blog posts.
But we didn't before at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna necessarily harm you, but I don't know that it's going to do the best for you. That's why I think the human element is important. But if it's relevant, if it's authoritative, and it's something unique, I think that'll be helpful. You just don't want to say the same thing that a million other people have said exactly the same way 100 times in your area in particular. All right, so that's the website, and we can get into that a little bit deeper in terms of organic content, but I think that should be enough. But what would be helpful is just kind of understanding of Google's ranking factors. You've got your relevance. Is the content a good match for what someone typed into Google? Like, for example, if they typed in emergency tree removal near me, and your site mentions that exact phrase on a page dedicated to it, you're relevant to that search. So you want to be thinking about the topics that people are thinking about. And another factor that comes up as well in search is proximity. At least for the maps, it can say, how close are you to this person? They're going to determine, is there somebody another company between me and this person? And if that's the case, like, what can you do to put yourself above that other company that's between you and the person you want to be getting to? So in the proximity factor. So you really want to work to have a really tight profile so that you can extend your visibility. And sometimes you'll have companies that'll have multiple Google business profiles because they cover a really large surface area. So it's important to make sure that those are tight and they're not cannibalizing on one another. And then I think also what's going to be helpful in getting your rankings up, and so that you're found more, is that you have a good reputation, a really strong online footprint, your reviews, you have links back to your website with backlinks. Those are other links from other websites linking to you, how your brand is mentioned around the web. So is there any PR that can be done, like a press release? You named in other people's Facebook posts, those kinds of things that are showing Google that you have some authority and prominence where others may not. So these can all influence your content or your visibility online.
My friend and mentor, Dennis, one of the articles I had pulled up for this conversation, he always says over 80% of the internet is spam, and your website is guilty until proven innocent. And he talks about, where Google talks about EAT, EEAT. It used to be EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, and now it's expertise, experience, authority, and trust, and everything you're talking about. So yeah, everything you're talking about is spot on with what they're looking for. Yeah, I mean, when you're saying human written, I completely agree with you. You said cannibalizing, like we're just recycling other content almost to a T. That happens a lot with AI, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And so what you're getting is a really good book report, but you also want to be the author of the book.
Yeah.
At least having your own spin on it. And so AI is a great tool. I don't want to, I use it myself for all kinds of things.
Yeah, we use it all the time. It's great.
And you have to. It's like having that, a chainsaw versus a regular saw. And so it's great to have that. But you don't want it to be doing all the work where you're not thinking. You just need to be using it as a tool to support that. So I'm all for AI. I'm not 100% sure on this AI in terms of helping with EAT and producing content that's going to be valuable. We like to have human written content, or at least human directed. So that would be, you get the tools that are just regurgitating. We get into video now.
That's what I was going to say. They love video.
Yeah.
Of you doing what you're promoting, like a video of us cutting down a tree. Google loves that, right?
They do. And I think drone footage is great. And there's also the possibility of AI video here as well. We'll see where that goes. But I think real, authentic, the guy who's got his straps on and he's climbing the tree and he's got a GoPro on, that's amazing. Who wouldn't like seeing that?
Oh, there's so many social media pages, and that's all it is people climbers up in a tree with their GoPro, and they get tons of views and engagement. People love it.
Yeah, those are great trust signals. So we recommend that you take your iPhone. Everybody's got a little movie theater in their pocket, and so
right.
And you've got a movie camera there, so just go ahead and snap pictures or take video of you doing the work and put it up there yourself. It doesn't have to be so curated, I think, where I'm a big fan of the owner-operator doing their own social in a way, because you're on the ground, you're there doing it, you're taking pictures. It's awesome. Who doesn't love to see, like, hey, look at this project we just did.
Yep.
This is what we did before. This is what we did after. What do you think? And then also a helpful hint is always good, helpful tips. So I think those are great ways to give more trust signals across the web outside of Google Business Profile, outside of your website.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're working on is I'm writing a book, and it's not with, I have one book that's coming out that's primarily written with AI, and it's going to say it, but then there's an entirely other book that's not at all. And what we're doing is we're using this thing called Plod, and you can either record on your phone or record on the Plod device. And there's an app called Plod. It's PLAUD. I'm sure you've heard of it. And what this company I'm working with has you do is you talk for 10 or 15 minutes. Like, okay, you put your chapter outline together of every landscape topic you want to talk about, whether it's gardening, Zen gardens, hardscaping, lawn mowing, tree trimming, shrub trimming, all that. And obviously, if you've been doing it for 10 plus years or even 5 plus years, you can talk about all those, and you just record talking. Well, it transcribes it verbatim, what you just said, and then you make some edits. And then from there, you can have AI like read it and make suggestions, but you still just make those edits and then release the book. That way it doesn't get flagged with, because Amazon, I think, is flagging if it's all AI generated there, because I think they just got flooded with so much AI generated content too.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing that to kind of build more authority with the EAT process of, okay, we have a book, and it's not for other businesses. It's actually designed for just other homeowners who are DIY, or, maybe they want to hire someone, but we have a whole chapter on, how to hire a professional and, how to hire professionals for things that maybe you don't know how to do or just don't even want to do. Maybe tree removal because it's dangerous. So,
right.
But yeah, we're working on that. With everything else I have going on with the business, projects like that take 6 months to a year, and that's okay. But we're really excited about that because I think that's going to be an element, a big differentiator compared to a lot of other landscape companies of actually having a book that's for homeowners. It's not for other landscape businesses. It's actually for homeowners. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give a copy to our clients when they get an estimate from us and things like that too.
Yeah. And you said something that stood out, which is differentiation. And I think that comes back to the content and who you are as an individual or as a business and what your website represents and what your profile represents. If it's all the same, it's all the same, and you get generic stuff, you're going to get generic customers, you're looking to grow your business. So you need to find that thing that's going to help you differentiate yourself and show that you have the expertise, that you have the authority, that you have the experience, that you're trustworthy. These are all the things that need to factor in, and writing your own content or having good content you don't have to write your own, just that it's unique and professional and gets to the bottom of it for somebody, that it's going to be helpful. I think that's really the way to go.
We took that risk. I did, at least. And so did the rest of the company. They followed suit. Nice. Other guys that work here, where we just started making kind of some silly videos too. I mean, we have the professional videos, but where we're actually really being ourselves. And at the time when we first started doing it, we thought it was this huge risk and that, it would really turn a lot of people away. And it did the opposite. It really attracted a lot of cool clients that we love working with. And it was just, we were just making funny videos for our ads. Yep. And it was like the sillier they were or are, the more, because that's another differentiator. It's like, it is embarrassing. It's very embarrassing, and it takes a lot to actually be yourself on camera and be goofy or whatever it might be. I mean, we do our best not to be unprofessional, but we might have like a little joke or some humor. One of our ads is actually me for our junk hauling company, and I showed you that, and it's me like rapping, and I thought that people would be so upset about that. And it actually led to a lot of people calling us. So yeah,
I think that's great. The authenticity is great. Actually, it made me think of somebody I spoke with the other day. I do hope we get a chance to work with them. They're out of Arizona, Tucson area, and they're legit tree dudes. They are like living the dream. They love trees. They love, like, they're in it, and it comes across so authentic, and I just want to amplify that for them, not to the point of like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to make it so that they're, we're overdoing it by any means, but I just want to promote who they are, that their love for trees, their love for health of trees, and their ethos, and making sure that is out there and it represents exactly who they are and it resonates with people, because there are going to be people who be like, dude, I'm not into these guys, they're a little too much for I just want somebody to come and cut my tree down, but they're the real deal, and their love of trees and being arborists. And so I'm all for that. I think that's the way it needs to be. This is who we are, this is what we're about, this is what's important to us, this is what we care about, and we also are fun-loving people. That's all good, and I think that is, we're using these tools to get in front of people. But why are we getting in front of? Or if we're getting in front of them and we're not ourselves, or we're just some like ditto copy of somebody else, it's really not going to be as effective, and you're not going to grow and scale. So I think in terms of visibility, it's not just being visible, but it's also being who you are and amplifying that,
which can be challenging at times. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's good to have the professionalism there for sure, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like we talk about things like that all the time, following the NCA 300 pruning standards and doing things the right way, and how we love to do that. And, we're not a company that, we're not praying that there's a storm that knocks trees on people's houses. We don't like to see that. We like to be the company that provides preventative options. Like, we want to be the company that goes there and gets the tree down before the storm does. We don't like when one of our long-term clients has a tree fall on their house. We think, man, we should have prevented that. And it would have been more cost effective for the client if we would have just done it when it was still standing.
Right.
And there are a lot of clients who just want to keep the tree as long as they can. And as long as they're okay with that risk, then we know we did our jobs if we explained the risk and we gave them we like to do these risk assessment reports for the clients. That way, at least they know what they're potentially up against. And if they decide to keep the tree, then that's okay. But we're not doing our jobs if we don't give them that minimum.
Right.
If we just let a tree stand there that we know shouldn't be there.
And that's where you come across as the expert, right? You know better. You're the authority. You know what's right and what's wrong. So I love it. I think it's exactly how it should be. And you should reflect that in your content and your approach, which it sounds like you already do. Actually, I know you do that. So anyway, well, this is all good topic. These are all good topics. I think there are lots of tools out there or lots of information where you can go and say, oh, this is exactly what I need to do for my Google business profile. You can go ahead and do it yourself. You could hire a company like ours to do that kind of work to help build out content, human written content, and to do Google business profile posts and optimization. But however you do it, it's important that you're measuring it and making sure that you're seeing some change in that. So keyword rankings are great. Your city plus whatever, three or four or five more towns with tree service in Bloomington, Indiana, for example. See where you're ranking in terms of map pack and organic listings. Make sure you're looking at your website leads and your form submissions, your quote requests. Where are they coming from? Are you using call tracking tools to measure who's calling you? Are you just kind of keeping tabs of it? So I think it doesn't always matter if you're number one in one specific area, but if it's generating traffic for you and opportunities, that's where you want to double down. So there's that. And then of course with AI coming up, there's so much information coming up and it's constantly changing the way that the results are coming up. But what you do that's good for your Google business profile and your website, it's going to be helpful to pull in those tools or AI tools to pull in good information. And so I guess in short, that visibility really isn't an accident. It's something that you build towards. You can fix your citations. You can optimize your Google business profile. You can build those city pages. You can build the service pages. You can track what matters and really start to make a difference. And all of this said is not just for the sake of exercise. It's to educate your clients, to let Google and other search engines know that you're an authority, that you're trustworthy, and that you're somebody that you can get the job done and that you want to be hired for those jobs. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for today.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. Great to see you always.
Yeah, I think that we can dive in deeper in any one particular topic, but I'm glad it's been a few weeks since we've gotten on the call, and so glad to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. I love it.
All right, bud. All right, thanks.
All right. Well, take care.
Bye.